So picture this. It's March 2009.
Okay.
There's an online poll asking the general public to vote for the ideal Romanian woman.
Right. So you'd expect, like, a mainstream pop star.
Yeah.
Or a politician, maybe.
Exactly. Or an Olympic athlete. Right. But the winner, who captured nearly 25% of the entire national vote, was none of those.
Wow. 25% is huge.
Yeah, it really is. The winner of that poll was actually the country's most prominent figure in the adult entertainment industry.
I mean, that's just a data point that forces us to completely reevaluate how we measure influence.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when a highly controversial figure dominates a mainstream, like, family-friendly popularity contest, it signals a massive shift. It changes how we understand audience mobilization and, well, how fame is actually constructed in the digital age.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Wow.
If you've ever worried that a single controversial digital footprint or even just an unconventional job history will permanently trap you in one career path, this story completely upends that fear.
It really does. It shatters that whole ceiling.
Right. So today we are analyzing the trajectory of Alina Plugaru. We're looking at her journey not just as a biography, but basically as a masterclass in treating attention as raw material.
Yeah, treating it like capital.
Exactly. The mission here is to understand the actual mechanics of how someone builds a massive global brand in a highly stigmatized field, and then, and this is the crazy part, successfully executes a deeply complex pivot into traditional brick-and-mortar entrepreneurship and primetime national television.
Right, because when we view a personal brand through the lens of a startup business, it changes everything.
How so?
Well, the mechanics of scaling and pivoting become the primary focus, right? This is a textbook case study on how digital notoriety can be converted into mainstream commercial leverage.
Yeah.
To really understand how she ended up on national television, we have to unpack the economics of controversy. We have to look at the algorithmic distribution of visual media and, honestly, the intense psychology of niche audiences.
Let's start by looking at the foundation then. Because the ambition is, it's pretty evident from a remarkably young age.
Very young.
Yeah, our sources indicate she was born in December 1987 in Vaslui, Romania. And at just 15 years old, she makes this massive decision to leave her hometown and move to Bucharest to pursue modeling.
Which is a huge leap for a 15-year-old.
Right. And then by 16, she pivots into working as an exotic dancer. But she doesn't just, like, settle into a single venue in the capital.
No, she really hits the road.
Exactly. The timeline shows she spent 2 solid years touring the entire country, moving from city to city to build her initial popularity.
Wow, 2 years of touring at 16 and 17 is, I mean, that's an exhausting, relentless pace.
It really is.
But it's also the grueling boots-on-the-ground work of audience acquisition.
Huh?
Before the internet offered us instant sterilized feedback loops via likes and shares.
Right. The algorithm does the work now.
Exactly. Back then, performers had to learn crowd psychology in a physical room. At 16, she was learning the fundamental mechanics of how to hold attention.
Reading the room?
Yeah, breathing, shifting dynamics in a venue, marketing herself in real time. That kind of grassroots touring builds an incredible resilience that becomes crucial later on.
I can imagine. And that live performance background really sets the stage for her entry into broader media.
It does.
So at age 18 in 2006, the sources note that a visit to a film set sparked her interest in transitioning into films for mature audiences.
Right.
She makes her debut working with a director named Zenza Raji. Now, I want to challenge the narrative here a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because it's very easy for us to sit back a decade later and call this a brilliant, calculated brand strategy. But I was looking at the sheer number of aliases she operated under during this entry period.
Oh, different stage names, yeah.
Yeah. Enrica Dolls, Alina Blue, Crystal, Selena, Ellie, Eve, Nicole.
That is a lot of names.
It's chaotic, right? At first glance, anyway. I mean, if I'm building a business from scratch in 2006, utilizing 7 different names doesn't sound like brand building. It sounds like brand cannibalization.
It totally does, from a modern perspective.
Right, because if a consumer searches for Crystal, they aren't finding Alina Plugaru. Doesn't fracturing her identity like that actively hurt her market share?
Well, in traditional mainstream media, fracturing your name would be disastrous. Absolutely.
Right.
But the distribution mechanics of the mature entertainment industry in the mid-2000s operated under a completely different set of rules.
Okay, how so?
At that time, specific production studios or regional European distributors, They often demanded exclusive contractual rights to a specific stage name.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so if a performer wanted to maximize their income by working across multiple different studios simultaneously, they literally had to operate under multiple aliases. Otherwise, they'd be violating exclusivity clauses.
Ah, okay. So instead of trying to funnel all of her customers to one single centralized storefront, she essentially opened a dozen different storefronts on the exact same street.
Exactly. She was occupying as much digital and physical shelf space as humanly possible.
That's actually brilliant.
Right. A viewer in Germany might purchase a DVD featuring Enrica dolls, while an online consumer in Italy is searching for content under the name Crystal. She is capturing both of those revenue streams.
And this is 2006, so search engines are pretty primitive.
Exactly. They relied heavily on exact text matching. So flooding the zone with multiple keywords was a highly effective strategy back then.
So she just gathered all that attention separately.
Yeah, and she only consolidated all of that fragmented attention under her primary brand name, Alina Plugaru, much later. Basically, once she had achieved enough leverage to dictate her own terms.
Well, that consolidation clearly worked. Because she didn't just participate in this niche market, she scaled to the absolute top of it.
She dominated it.
She really did. In Romania, she earned the title of the Queen of her specific industry. She secured the Best Romanian Actress Awards at the Peer Awards, that's the Romanian Erotic Industry Awards, in consecutive years, 2008 and 2009.
And she didn't just stay local either.
No, she paired that domestic dominance with aggressive international B2B networking.
Business to business.
Yeah. She was a regular featured dancer at major European trade fairs, the Eros show in Bucharest, the Feisty Ebb in Barcelona, the CL in Lisbon, plus events in Vienna and Sofia.
Those trade shows are critical, though. They represent the business-to-business infrastructure of that whole industry.
Right. It's not just about the fans there.
Exactly. By headlining those events, she was cementing relationships with international distributors. She was securing her status as a high-value asset rather than just, a disposable performer.
Okay, so winning industry awards and headlining trade shows proves she captured the niche market.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here's where I get stuck. How does that localized, highly stigmatized fame break containment? How does it spill over into a mainstream public arena?
It's the million-dollar question.
Because that brings us back to our opening hook. That 2009 Ideal Romanian Woman poll. Securing nearly 25% of a national vote when you work in a highly controversial field requires a massive mobilization of people.
It does. And what we're seeing there is a real-time demonstration of the power of a highly mobilized niche audience versus a passive mainstream audience.
Okay, explain the difference.
Well, in an open internet poll, the mainstream audience behaves passively. They might casually cast a single vote for, like, a television news anchor or a popular actress.
Right, they click once and close the tab.
Exactly. They immediately move on with their day. But a niche fan base, particularly one centered around a stigmatized industry, operates with a completely different psychology.
Because they feel like outsiders, too.
Partly, yeah. They form these incredibly intense parasocial relationships. Consumers of highly specific, controversial media often feel a distinct sense of ownership and defensiveness over the figures they follow.
Oh, that makes sense. They want to protect her.
Right. When an opportunity like a national poll arises, they don't just vote once. They organize on message boards, they share direct links, and they basically flood the poll to ensure their chosen figure wins.
Wow.
It proves that a concentrated, highly aggressive digital following can fundamentally outleverage a broad, passive mainstream audience in almost any measurable digital metric.
That is wild. And speaking of metrics, if you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out.
Awesome. And we can actually measure the true scale of that mobilized fan base by looking beyond just domestic Romanian polls.
Right, because her digital footprint is completely borderless. Let's put some hard data to that fame, actually. Our sources pull from the Pantheon project.
Such a fascinating data set.
It really is. For those listening who might not be familiar, Pantheon is a data engine developed by researchers at MIT. It maps historical cultural production by analyzing Wikipedia page views and cross-referencing an individual's global presence across different languages. Basically, it measures the historical and geographical footprint of a human being.
And her specific footprint is statistically remarkable.
Let's hear the numbers.
According to that Pantheon data, globally, she ranks as the 226th most popular actor in her specific field of mature entertainment.
Wow.
Yeah. She is the 744th most popular biography out of all individuals from Romania across any discipline whatsoever.
That includes politicians, athletes, everybody.
Everybody. And she's the second most popular Romanian in her industry globally, sitting just behind Steve Holmes.
The Wikipedia metrics provide an even sharper picture, honestly. She accumulated over 43,000 page views on her Wikipedia profile in the past year alone.
Which is huge sustained interest.
Yeah, and when we break down the language demographics of those views, the narrative takes a really unexpected turn.
Oh, the language breakdown is fascinating.
Right. Naturally, Romanian makes up the bulk of the traffic with over 24,000 views. English follows with roughly 9,600 views. Both of those make geographical and linguistic sense.
Sure.
But the third most popular language for her page is Persian, generating over 3,700 views.
Wow.
Furthermore, her fastest yearly growth was in southern Azerbaijani, which saw a 143% spike, and Amili, which is a language spoken in parts of India and Nepal, that grew by 100%.
That is just incredible data.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
How does a Romanian media figure generate massive spikes in southern Azerbaijani and Mathili?
Well, this phenomenon really illustrates the defining characteristic of visual media, particularly mature content.
What do you mean?
Think about it. If you are a stand-up comedian or a dramatic actor, your personal brand is locked firmly behind a language barrier.
Right, because you need to understand the joke to laugh.
Exactly. Your commercial viability stops at the border of your native tongue because your art relies on linguistic comprehension. But visual media bypasses the language center of the brain entirely.
You don't need subtitles to consume it.
Precisely. It is universally consumable. So what we are witnessing with those massive language spikes in Persian, Southern Azerbaijani, and Mathili is the pure result of algorithmic distribution.
Oh, the algorithm is doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah. A piece of visual content gets uploaded to a server in Europe. An algorithm registers that the content has a high engagement rate. That algorithm then autonomously pushes the content to screens in regions completely removed geographically and culturally from the creator's origin.
It's as if the internet autonomously opened up international franchise locations for her brand, without her ever having to sign a commercial lease or, buy a plane ticket.
Exactly. The algorithm acts as a global distributor. However, accumulating that global attention is merely gathering the raw material, right?
Right. What do you do with it?
Exactly. The most critical phase of any business life cycle, and certainly any controversial career, is the pivot. How do you take that stigmatized fame, legitimize it, and diversify your revenue streams into the mainstream?
And that is the core of her story. It's where the mechanics get incredibly complex.
Yeah, she doesn't just fade away.
Not at all. In September 2009, she formally announces her retirement from the adult entertainment industry. The sources note a brief return in late 2010, but the overall trajectory was clearly shifting heavily toward entrepreneurship.
She was building a physical empire.
Yeah, she began converting her controversial digital fame into physical brick-and-mortar businesses. In 2011, she establishes a touring dance troupe, the Erotic Dreams show.
Which actually wins Best Show at the PR Awards.
Right. She then transitions into managing a top-rated massage parlor in Bucharest called Mon Amour.
That's a huge pivot.
It is, and I want to dig into the how here. Transitioning from mature films to running a physical business is notoriously difficult.
Oh, it's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, because traditional banks, credit card processors, and commercial real estate landlords frequently redline individuals from controversial fields.
They won't touch them.
Exactly. They just reject the applications. So how does someone bypass that institutional stigma to secure a storefront?
Well, overcoming that commercial redlining requires an entrepreneur to really leverage their cash flow and, crucially, strategic partnerships.
Okay, break that down.
When traditional credit lines or commercial leases are closed off due to reputational risk clauses, individuals in this position usually have to self-fund.
Out of pocket.
Yeah, using the capital they stockpiled during their peak earning years. Basically, they become their own bank.
Wow, so no loans, just pure cash.
Right. Or, alternatively, they form partnerships with established corporate entities. A partner might hold the clean paperwork and the commercial lease, but they desperately need the one asset the controversial figure possesses.
Which is guaranteed consumer foot traffic.
Exactly. By managing a troupe and a physical parlor, she transitioned from being the product to managing the product. She was utilizing her massive brand equity to drive revenue to a physical location where she employed others.
That takes serious business savvy. And while she's building this physical business footprint, she's methodically executing a television crossover.
The TV stuff is brilliant.
It really is. The timeline proves she didn't just suddenly decide to jump into reality TV in 2015. She had been laying the groundwork for a decade.
Playing the long game.
Right. The sources show she had a role in a show called Secretiul Marie as early as 2005. She appeared in Making of in 2007 and Nimeni Nu Ai Perfect in 2009.
So she was constantly present.
Yeah, she deliberately kept a foot in the door of standard scripted television throughout her entire mature film career.
Which is brilliant risk mitigation. By consistently appearing in traditional media, she was proving to mainstream producers and directors that she was a reliable, professional asset on a standard set.
Showing up on time, hitting her marks.
Exactly. She was building the industry trust necessary to facilitate her biggest mainstream leap.
And that leap happens in 2015. She is cast as a competitor on the PRO TV reality series Sunt Celebru, Scotema de IC.
It's a huge show.
It is. For our listeners, that is the Romanian franchise of the massive international hit I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out Here. We are talking about primetime national family living room television.
Which is just a crazy contrast to where she started.
Completely. She survived 16 days in the jungle before a public vote eliminated her. But I want to examine the television network's motivation here.
Right, why cast her?
Exactly. Mainstream family networks are traditionally incredibly risk-averse. Why would a major network intentionally cast someone with a highly publicized background in a controversial field?
Because in the modern television landscape, controversy is the most reliable, bankable currency for ratings.
It just drives eyeballs.
Always. The network executives were not making a moral statement about her career path. They were executing a calculated economic transaction.
They knew what they were doing.
They absolutely knew. They understood that casting a highly polarizing figure guarantees a massive spike in engagement.
They knew half the country would tune in specifically to judge her, and her highly mobilized, dedicated fan base would tune in aggressively to support her.
Right, and vote to keep her on the screen. It is a mutually beneficial arrangement. The network effectively buys access to her pre-mobilized audience to inflate their own viewership metrics.
And what does she get out of it?
She receives an invaluable platform for brand sanitization. By surviving in a grueling jungle environment, interacting normally with traditional celebrities, and being broadcast directly into millions of living rooms, she actively normalized her public image.
She just became a regular person to them.
Exactly. She completed the incredibly difficult transition from being a taboo internet search term to becoming a recognizable mainstream television personality.
When we zoom out and look at the entire trajectory, it is a staggering evolution. I mean, we start with a 15-year-old moving to Bucharest with serious ambition.
Yeah, taking a huge risk.
Right. She enters a highly stigmatized field at 18, utilizes a decentralized branding strategy with multiple aliases to flood the search engines, and scales to absolute dominance in her market.
She constructs a borderless digital footprint. She cultivates a parasocial audience so dedicated they voted her the ideal Romanian woman in a public poll.
Still can't get over that stat.
It's wild.
Yeah.
All while global distribution algorithms pushed her visual content to entirely new demographics thousands of miles away in South Asia and the Middle East.
And then she executes the pivot. She takes that massive global data footprint and funnels it directly into tangible entrepreneurship.
Into brick and mortar.
Yeah, navigating commercial redlining to manage a physical storefront and a touring business, culminating that journey by securing a spot on primetime reality television.
It's a masterclass.
It really is. For anyone listening, the core takeaway is the sheer adaptability of a personal brand. An unconventional or heavily stigmatized starting point does not have to dictate the ceiling of your career trajectory, provided you treat your attention like raw capital and reinvest it strategically.
Which leaves us with a final sociological concept to consider for you guys listening.
Let's hear it.
We've just examined the mechanics of a woman who successfully navigated from a highly controversial corner of media straight into mainstream business ownership and national television. It forces us to ask, in our heavily digitized, attention-driven economy, does the stigma of working in a taboo industry actually permanently define a person anymore?
That's a great question.
Right. Or has modern culture shifted so fundamentally that all attention, regardless of how controversially it was generated, is simply raw capital waiting to be refined into the next commercial venture?
From the fringes of the internet to the primetime jungle, it all comes down to how you manage the pivot. Keep diving deep.